Hi, it's good to be with you guys again. My name is Brad Hill, and today we're going to look at the first chapter in the book of James. We're going to break that down, and we're going to see how we can build our faith through different trials that we have, and how that building of our faith can ultimately help us be better doers in the calling that God has on our lives. Let's take a look at verse 2. It says, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." You know, when we face trials, it's like whenever you're working out in the gym and you're building your muscle, like as you lift those weights, it's tearing your muscles down. And then when you rest, those muscles build themselves back up. But this time they build themselves back up stronger because of the trials that your muscles faced while lifting weights, right? And so our faith is very much like that. As we face trials in our lives, those hardships, whenever we are left with nothing but our faith in God to carry us through those trials, the more that we go through that, the more steadfastness it creates within us, that it strengthens our faith as we go through these trials. And in verse 5, it continues on. "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in faith with no doubting, for the one who doubts is like a wave in the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind." You see, trials build our faith, our steadfastness. Whenever things that we are currently putting our faith in are removed, then we have no other choice but to put our faith in God, right? And as we're growing in our faith, we should be seeking wisdom as well. And that's what verse 5 is talking about here, is to ask God for wisdom so that we know how to handle these trials and how to put our faith in him and how to pray through these trials. And God promises that he will grant wisdom to us if we ask him for it. But we can't doubt. We have to have that faith. And so in order to have that faith, we go through these trials to strengthen our faith, so that when we ask for wisdom, God will grant us wisdom because we have the faith to believe he's going to grant the wisdom, right? And so if we take a look at verse 7, it says, "For that person must not suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord if he is double-minded, unstable in all his ways." Again, reinforcing that idea of faith, having faith that God is going to grant us the wisdom that we're asking for. And then if we look at verse 12, it really just kind of wraps a bow around trials and the testing of our faith. It says, "Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive a crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him." And then when we go into 13, it says, "Let no one say when he is tempted, I am being tempted by God, for God cannot be tempted with evil, and he himself tempts no one. But each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desires. Then desires, when it is conceived, gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is fully grown, brings forth death." And then in 16 it goes on, "Do not be deceived, my beloved brothers. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change." Simply meaning that God never changes. He is always light. So when you're facing trials, ask yourself, is God testing my faith with this trial, or is this a trial that is simply due to my own sinful choices? You know, much like it says in verse 14, "But each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own evil desires." So we can face trials of two different kinds. We can face trials that God has put in our life to help strengthen our faith, or we can face trials that we simply invite into our life by our own sinful nature. And either way, when you face either one of those trials, simply just ask God to help grow your faith in spite of the situation, whether that God is testing your faith or whether you have put yourself in this trial. Just ask God to test your faith in that situation. So now let's take a look at verse 21. Therefore put away all filthiness and rampant wickedness, and receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your souls. But be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man who looks intently at his natural face in the mirror. For he looks at himself and goes away and at once forgets what he was like. So now James is tying all of this together. He is telling us not to just be hearers of God's word, but to be doers of God's word. Now, if we have gone through trials and we've asked for wisdom through those trials and we've built our faith up and we're in this steadfastness that James talks about, to where our faith is steadfast no matter what, that whenever we hear God speak or we see God move, we're able to go and be doers in that situation and not simply hearers or observers of what's going on. We're actually participants in what's going on because we have the faith to step out and go and do those things, whether we're afraid that we're going to mess it up or whether we're afraid that we can't do it or we're afraid of fill in the blank. It doesn't matter, because if you have the faith to back it up, you know that when you step out, God's going to be there and he's going to fill in any gaps that we think that are there, because we have the faith knowing that he brought us through all of these trials, and now when he calls us to go and do something, we know he's going to show up and he's going to ultimately be the one that does it, and he's just using us to do it, and we're simply tools at that point because we have got enough faith built up knowing that God is going to come through for somebody else or in another situation where he is using us. So what about you guys? Is there trials maybe in your life where God is building your faith? Maybe you want to share that with the group and you guys can pray together and encourage one another. Or maybe there is a new area that you're feeling called to step into. Maybe share that with the group and then you guys can pray together and share your faith as that new venture happens in your life. And then I would encourage you guys to go back and read James one more time together and see if there's something new that jumps out at you guys. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next video.